Hi, I'm Dario. We're here at the Padelspeed pod. We're lucky to have one of the ambassadors, Louie. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
GB number 3. How did you get into padel?
Probably would have been like 2014, 2015. I moved to Spain in Marbella. I moved there with my dad just for a better lifestyle, get away from Barry. And we lived across the road from a paddle club, so eventually had to give it a go, and it all sort of escalated from there.
Nice. Were you playing tennis before, or was padel your first racket sport?
I played a little bit of tennis when I was very young. Wasn't very good, not to a high standard, but rugby was sort of the main sport I was doing. And then paddle sort of took over later on.
In terms of training, how do you go about it? And do you notice any difference between the training that you were doing in Spain to the one that you're doing here in the UK?
Yeah, it's quite different. When I was training in Spain, I was pretty much full-time. Spent quite a bit of time at different academies where training would be every day, sometimes twice a day. Now moving here, coaching a bit more, training's taking a bit of a hit, so it's less frequent. Try and still keep the intensity just as high, but definitely, much more volume whilst I was in Spain. It was more of a full-time job compared to here now. It's only, sort of a few times a week. So it's taking a bit of a hit, but still enjoying it.
Do you notice any difference between the way of teaching padel in Spain to the one that the coaches are teaching here? Do you have a Spanish coach here? Is it a British? Do you see a difference in the school of teaching?
Yeah, it is. It's very different for sure. In terms of personal experience, I had a lot of coaching in Spain in terms of receiving a lot of coaching. Here, not so much. We'll train as a group. We do have a national coach, but it's a lot more of a sort of generic coaching style in terms of we're training to play as a team, and we're trying pairs rather than more of a personal touch that you maybe get in Spain, where you've got a coach where you're doing some technical training and more tactical. But definitely in terms of style, I think it's very clear that here is slightly more aggressive. People tend to have come from a different racket background, mainly tennis. I think a lot of the coaches have still had a bit of time in Spain, which is nice, and you can see that in their style of coaching. But in terms of personal experience, let's say 90% of any coaching I've received has all been in Spain.
Following a little bit on what you mentioned, that here the play style is a little bit more aggressive. Do you find now that you're competing in the FIBs as well, is the British play style, from players that come from tennis, they're a bit better at the volleys, play everything very hard from the back? Are they doing well in the FIBs? Do you think that style is going to take over the Spanish way of playing, where you play more lobs?
Absolutely. I mean, I think obviously you've got to be a bit careful with calling it, like an aggressive style and a Spanish style. And it's, sometimes it can be compared a little bit too extreme. I think if, you only have to watch the best in the world, that's how they play, right? They play very aggressive. They move forward. They don't spend a lot of time at the back. Yes, they're able to do that. They do a lot of lobs. But, if you look at someone like Kuwait or someone like Galan, they're hitting 2-3 shots and they're making their way forward. So I think even in Spain, that's how padel is getting taught now, without forgetting your classic, lob and play to the feet and, slowing the game down. Those are definitely some of the kind of key parts of the game, and you should definitely learn them. But I think regardless of whether you're playing here, you're playing in Spain, you definitely need to, slowly move towards that sort of more aggressive approach. Yeah.
And then what about your style? Will you classify yourself as an aggressive player, or which type of a style do you go into when you're playing, and do you find that you need to play different styles depending on the courts?
I consider myself someone as a fairly aggressive player. I like spending most of my time at the net. That's definitely where I can be most effective. My biggest weapons are at the net compared to at the back. Sometimes, like you said, if the condition of the court doesn't allow for it, you have to be a bit more patient. That was kind of the case this weekend. I played a recent tournament where you had to be a little bit more patient moving forward. But if you get the chance, then definitely I'm keen to get to the net and stay there for as long as I can.
And what sort of racket are you playing with at the moment?
So I'm sponsored by Knox, so definitely using Knox. We're actually very lucky enough to have it here in store, the exact model I use, so I can grab it for you now. So I play with this beauty here. So it's the 12K AT10 Genius Attack. Been playing with this racket for a while now. I was using this same racket last year. It was the 18K version, the Attack. I quite like it. Like we just spoke about, my biggest sort of weapons are at the net, right? So it's, a racket that's going to help me get a bit more power, a bit more spin, a bit more pace out of the net shots is what I was looking for. And this sort of 12K version, which is, from personal experience, a little bit harder than that 18K, just allows me to get a little bit more out of those shots. And yeah, and it's great to see that Padelspeed are stock in this. So, you know, if you want to get one and play with the same racket, you know where to get it, which would be padelspeed.com.
Linking a little bit with the previous question that we discussed, the padel scene, and that we were saying the different styles, UK, elsewhere, now that you're competing internationally, how do you feel, or which countries do you feel are coming up strong?
It's tough. I think there's quite a few in Europe now. Definitely Holland is jumping to mind, Sweden's jumping to mind, France are doing it really well. I think they've just got so many players. They've got really good depth. I think, you know, kind of compared to the UK, we're doing well, but it's just the pure amount of players they have compared to us, I think is just a lot more. So they're able to kind of have a bit more training, kind of more local tournaments, better practice for these international events. So there's plenty of countries in Europe that are really growing at a fast pace.
In terms of ambitions, goals, where you think you're at? You think you're at a point that you want to continue to progress and develop your career as a padel player, or you think that you want to stay away from that and focus more on coaching?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely very keen to continue my career as a player. You know, still quite young, got many years ahead of competing. I'm enjoying tying that in with coaching and sort of growing that part of my career here in the UK. The way the ranking is fluctuates a lot, so it's kind of going up, it's going down. I definitely want to just maintain, you know, my position in the GB team, stay within sort of the top few players in the GB ranking, and achieve the, you know, the best sort of ultimate level that I can. And whilst doing that, you sort of grow the game in the UK, help coaching, help, you know, potentially set up maybe some academies. That for me would be my main goal.
So Louie, you are competing internationally. So for all the young people out there that they maybe have started picking up padel and they're enjoying the game, they want to start competing, what would you say that they need to do in order to be where you are now?
I mean, there's definitely no perfect blueprint. I think that let's get that out there. Everyone kind of gets into it in a different way. My personal experience was almost like falling into that sort of role. It was very gradual. The sport was growing year by year. I think now it's easy to put too much pressure too soon, you know, with people kind of seeing the level that's out there. They're putting too much pressure to achieve maybe a ranking or a goal or to win a specific tournament a bit too early on. So I think it's important to set sort of like, you know, little milestones and make sure that you start low, winning your local tournaments, and then you win in maybe your national tournaments, and then you try an international tournament that's on home turf. You might not do well, you might do well, and then you go to a tournament internationally that's, you know, not too far from home, and just really keep scaling it. And along the way, you can kind of keep adjusting, right? Is this realistic? Am I doing well? Speak to your coaches, see what you need to work on. But I think it's important to keep it, you know, realistic and just take your time with it. I think it's very easy now, like we said, with how fast padel's growing, to kind of get ahead of yourself too soon and put things out there. And in the end, you know, that pressure can really hold you back.
And I think something that I would like to know is when did you realize, oh, I'm actually good at this sport, I could start competing and maybe make a living out of it? Mm-hmm.
It's a tough one to get right. I think for me personally, it was probably when I got called into the national team, you know, the main one for the seniors. So it would have been about 17. And I think that was just kind of a little bit of a check to say, whoa, kind of without necessarily trying. It wasn't like a big goal because it wasn't a big thing back then. You know, you've made it to this level. So, you know, if we were to take it a little bit more serious, potentially we can take it from there. So that was definitely probably the point where I was like, you know what, let's give this a little bit of a go. Let's take it a bit more serious and you know, see where we can go.
So Louie, padel is growing so much in the UK. Everyone is picking a racket, jumping into a court. Where do you see it going from where it is now, maybe 5 years down the line?
I mean, at this rate, I think it's gonna turn into a very, very big sport, right? It already is. The growth, I think, is phenomenal, and we're seeing that, right? Like, you know, it's nice to come back here. I haven't been back home here in Wales for a long time, so it's fantastic to come down and see that, you know, there's so much to offer, right? Like whether that's social, whether that's, you know, people looking to take it a little bit more serious and get involved in a bit of coaching. Like here, it's amazing. They're putting on, you know, Padelspeed got these coaching clinics and events and socials and mixers. players, just to get lots of people on court, which is fantastic. When I was living here in Wales, no one knew what paddle was, not for a long time. So it's fantastic to kind of come back after all this time and see that now, we've got these fantastic events on.
You've been competing internationally now for a while. What's the moment that stands out the most for you?
There's been quite a few. I've been lucky enough to play a lot of tournaments. I think the international ones are great. Of course, the national ones are amazing. But the best experiences overall are always the team events, like the World Championships, the Europeans. So one that springs to mind as a favourite would probably be last year against Portugal. Even though we did lose, it was a great match. It was one of those matches where, they were the big favourites. On paper, we didn't have a chance. The partnerships were kind of thrown around a little bit due to injury, so I ended up playing with someone I wouldn't usually play with on the different side, so it was all kind of last minute, and it was like a 3-set match. We kind of had like match points down and saved them, and just that thrill of winning that second set and there being that little sort of glimpse of, we might have a chance here, and we had a good support watching. I think that's kind of like the best feeling you can have on court. That's when you're really, really enjoying it the most.
Do you know when you're playing those games and you're getting absolutely battered, nothing is going your way, how do you go about that? What's the way of playing to try to get that game back into your zone?
Unfortunately, I do know that feeling. I've been in that situation a few times, and it's never nice. I'd like to think it's something that doesn't quite happen as much as often. I think with experience, you can kind of learn to weave your way through it. Of course, it's tough, and match to match is going to be different. But I'd say, to keep it simple, the best answer I could give you right now would probably be to have a very, very simple tactic, even if it's not working, but commit and trust that that's what you're going to do, right? So that if you lose doing it, you lose, fair enough, but at least you're doing what you tried to do, right? So that could be as simple as, we're going to lob this side player and we're going to play to this guy's backhand. And even if they win it off both shots, you stick to it. So at least you're getting a little win from getting that lob to that position or playing that ball there. You might lose the point, but you're taking little wins. I think otherwise, if you're playing someone that's just potentially better and you're not really following a plan, you can really easily start to lose your head. There's also, you've got to have that in mind where they might just be better, right? So you've just got to keep it simple, stick to one or two things, and take little wins from just getting those done.
Thanks for joining us, mate. That was good fun. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.